Hello, everyone. My name is Tom Suter. I am the CEO of the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center. And welcome to the event. I would like to welcome all our panelists, who I'll introduce in a minute. Special thanks to Jackie Biro and the entire Red Hat team. So this afternoon, we're going to hear from our panelists. We're going to have a Q&A session. We're going to pop in a few poll questions along the way. And I encourage all the audience to come in through the Q&A. And I want to put out a shout out to Kirsten Patton. Usually does this. She is getting married this weekend, so we gave her the webinar off. So you get me this weekend. But Kirsten has done a great job doing a lot of these. So hopefully I can live up to her high expectations. But welcome. So we have with us today a great panel. We're going to be talking about the future of cloud, modernizing and migrating, the migration thereof. This is a topic we've done for a while, but now it's like we've been advancing. The cloud adoption in the federal agencies has really skyrocketed the last few years. So really excited about this conversation. And if everybody can kind of do a little quick wave, we'll do a quick introduction of our panelists. We've got Hassing Hua Hassiang. Hopefully I got that right, but I know you go with Frankie. Welcome, Frankie. And where are you operating out of today?
Sure, yeah. Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm Frankie Sean.
Yep.
I work for FDIC as a
Frankie, before we get into it, we're going to go through real quick, and then I'll get back to you on it to start. I just want to know where you're working out of today, just so folks can know where you're operating. Like what city?
I'm at Washington D.C., Fairfax.
Great. Well, welcome. Next, we'll have Sandy Frederick, who is Senior IT Specialist, Cloud Architect, Office of the Chief Information Officer at the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Welcome, Sandy. And are you up in Maryland like everybody else from the NRC?
I am in Rockville.
Great. Well, welcome. And next we have Tom Santucci, IT Modernization Director, Office of the Technology Policy at United States General Services Administration. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
Glad to be. Where are you out of? I know, but I think we should let everybody else know.
I'm a proud resident of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but I'm in Western Maryland today.
Okay. So I am from Western Pennsylvania originally. I moved to Washington, D.C., and I'm a proud Steeler fan, although Sunday was a little challenging for us for the old home team. So I'll have to get that back on track. Now back to cloud. Next, we have Julio Mercado, who's Director of IT Security at the Millennium Challenge Corporation. Welcome, Julio. And where are you working out of today? I know your office is down, but...
Yeah, I'm out of Fredericksburg, Virginia. So,
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yep, so. Fantastic. And last but certainly not least, we have Michael Hardy, who is Chief Architect, Law Enforcement and Justice at Red Hat. Welcome, Mike.
Thank you, sir. And coming to you today from lovely Baltimore, Maryland, home of the Baltimore Ravens.
Too much information, but I am going to the Baltimore Raven game when we play you guys in Pittsburgh on, I believe it to be October 8th, but yep. Should be always a good time when we play our friends from Baltimore. Great. Well, let's, each of the panelists, I would love to get your perspectives on where we are and where we're going in your agencies and beyond. But maybe we'll start off with you, Tom, since you work with the DCOI, you run the DCOI, and you see perspectives from around government.
Sure. Today we're the managing partner with OMB on cloud strategies, commonly known as Cloud Smart, and also IPv6, which is a little unknown. And there's some requirements coming up September 30th that agencies need to meet on IPv6 initiatives. This has been instrumental for agencies to translate policy from OMB to the agency personnel. We run a community of practice. We have over 4,000 members, and we keep them informed of all of the principles within Cloud Smart. CISA's programs taking care of the security portion of Cloud Smart, Workforce continues to be an issue, but we've trained thousands of federal workforce in cloud products. And procurement, believe it or not, that's the third pillar of Cloud Smart, and that continues to be an issue. We're hearing from industry that even though you went through the FedRAMP process, agencies are still having a long period of time before they can procure the products. We're trying to streamline that and work on that. And we'll get into all these probably issues, including application rationalization, which is really at the heart of Cloud Smart. If I was able to change that name, I'd change it to Strategic Portfolio Management to align better with FATARA and the CIO role and the authority of managing their portfolio, what's under them, and getting all of their direct reports using the same data. And I'll leave it at that.
Great. One little quick follow-up. And I didn't bring this up in the prep call. What percentage of IT is in the cloud now in government? Do you have any sense of that?
We are trying to figure out ways of doing that. The reporting mechanisms, the moment in time spreadsheets that get floated around aren't really good. Dashboard's not really good either. There are some methods that we're doing. FedRAMP does a really good tracking system of their instances that they've been using, and also the exclusions. So we'll know what we might have the best idea of what's in the cloud using those methods. But there is no, because we don't require full portfolio disclosure through at the OMB level, it's hard to get that data.
Yeah. We'll have to, figure that out a little bit. I mean, even the CSPs, like, they don't know. They don't have a great idea. So yeah, interesting. Okay, I had to ask a question. Next, let's go with Frankie. And before, I just really like your agency. I love your leadership there. I know on Zero Trust, we worked with you on a big Zero Trust cross government area there. It seems like it's an exciting place, but love to hear what you're doing over there.
Yes. Yeah, I'm Frankie Shan. I work as a senior enterprise architect at FDIC. Our agency is not funded by federal government. We are self-funded. So for the procurement part, we got a little bit more freedom about budget spending and so on. But the freedom doesn't mean that no strategy. So we actually practice rigorous enterprise architecture as a foundation on top of the cloud architecture. I think to Tom's point, it's about strategy. It's about strategic portfolio. But from there, I may like to add on one more thing. It's about the strategies. I think I like to elevate up one more level to the business strategy. But we enable the business mission with the IT as a priority to the cloud. So for that, we actually apply quite a few business-driven strategy on top of the security, on the procurement, and the workforce. But overall, we apply business-driven. I call it ecosystem, if I can rename it to the strategy becoming business IT ecosystem, which including the portfolio as an overall transition to the cloud. Only then business value could be maximized. That is a short description about what we do.
Right, fantastic. Next, let's go with Sandy Frederick over at another great agency I love, Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And David Nelson has assembled a great team, including you.
Thank you. My name is Sandy Frederick, and I am a senior IT specialist. I'm actually the cloud architect for the agency. What we have recently done was reestablished our cloud strategy that focused more on application rationale, modernization, FinOps, and also using more of the native tools. So some of the things that we're currently doing is looking at the various things that need to move to the cloud. Like most of the people here, we're trying to comply to the DCOI mandates. So we have to shut down our data center, and that's really a driving factor to move things out. we're looking at these applications. We created a checklist to figure out, should you be an app service? Should you be a PaaS? Could you be, or is it make more sense for us to do a lift and shift and then plan on modernizing at a later date? So our focus is really more on application rationale and modernizing as much as we can, and then finding those cost reductions. I don't want to say savings because there's really no savings in the cloud, but ways that we can reduce our footprint and reduce our annual costs.
That's fantastic. Yeah, I think we'll get into a little bit more on the, rationalizing which apps. I think that's fantastic that every agency needs to do. Next, we'll go with Julio Mercado. And Julio, I love your agency. You're do a lot of impactful work around the world. And I know that you've had to move to cloud to support all those operations. So I'm really interested to hear what the latest and greatest.
Sure. My name is Julio Mercado. Been with MCC. This is my second go around. So I've come back as a director of IT security. So my predominantly job is, ensuring that the infrastructure is being watched, that we're patching vulnerabilities. But to your point, Tom, look, one of our issues with going to the cloud, a lot of us, I mean, we were one of the first to 365, and we were kind of a trendsetter. But one of the things that we're having now is, as you mentioned, we're a small agency with only 500 users, is having the resources to do all these required stuff. So as we spoke earlier in this week, one of the big focuses we're doing is on data classification. We've always been, from the first day of security, where do we know our data's at? And so that's a big push that we're doing right now. We're really close to pushing out the labels to all the agencies. But as everyone on this call knows, a lot of training has to come with that, because my former life, I did data loss prevention. So that's really what we got going on. We're trying to modernize. We're kind of in this hybrid into Azure. We have all these balls in the air, but we have a limited resources. So I always say we have a really, really sharp group. We have to be kind of a utility player. We don't have people that just specialize in one area, so we have to cross domains. So that's a bit of a challenge at times, but
you've got to be Renaissance people to everything and wear so many different hats.
Exactly.
Speaking of hats, Mike with Red Hat. I just made that up on the fly. I don't know if I'm the funniest guy in the world, but Mike, I'd love to hear your perspectives. What you see across. I know you deal mostly with the Department of Justice, but I also want to ask you a little bit about community software and how is it enhancing government operations a little bit, if you don't mind.
Yeah, so yeah, we can totally start there. I mean, all the innovation that we've seen over the last 10, 20 years is a result of the community's involvement, right? The community involvement has provided the industry the ability to scale development, right? To give everyone the ability to iterate, to speed development, to speed feature sets being delivered and ready. And then having vendors like Red Hat come in and making those adjustments, and also investing back in the community, right? And making those features ready for your enterprise, making sure everything is secure. So the community is a huge part of all the changes we've seen, including cloud, for where government stands today. There is not one piece of technology that is not a part of the open source community.
Right. Excellent. And where do you think the state of play in the government agencies? How far are we along? And what's your feel for how many of them are using cloud services, and what's the right balance, between hybrid, data centers? What do you see? Do you have any feel for it?
Yeah, so every enterprise is looking at cloud. Every enterprise has some form of footprint in the cloud across all of law enforcement and justice, right? And to kind of buoy everyone's points here, what we've seen is a shift from we are running to the cloud to Ms. Frederick's point of we're being more deliberate.
Yeah.
We're thinking about our use case. Are we going to adopt cloud native services to where, to Mr. Santucci's point, we can offload some of our workforce to a managed service to help us better support our enterprise and give us the ability to focus on our feature sets and our mission. So that's where we're seeing is I'm happy to see across the government, there's less of a run and much more being deliberate in how we approach cloud and approach change, because change is expensive, change takes time, change is an investment. And I'm happy to see the government making this shift.
Yeah. Fantastic. Let's get the poll out of the way because sometimes I forget and I don't want to get in trouble with the poll people. I don't mind getting on the bad side of a CEO, but CIO or something. But if I don't get these polls in, it's part of our accreditation. So, and actually the first one's around community software. So do you believe community software can significantly enhance government operations and services? Everybody.
Shared service?
Say again?
Do you mean shared service?
I think it means, I don't know. Do you believe that community software can significantly enhance government operations and services? I think so. I think you got to just read it the way it is. But anyway, okay. We usually start off with a little bit of a softball, but I think that's why people are involved with this. And let's go to the second one too. And the second question is, can you pop that up, team? Okay, we'll get that up in a second. Okay, in your opinion, how crucial is cloud migration for enhancing government operations through modernization? Okay, we'll give that a second. And let's see what the results are. Okay, we'll get that up. Yeah. I'll tell you what, we did a poll like this before COVID, and I think it's been changed since COVID. Because just my personal opinion, we had to get services up quick. You went in the cloud. I think we've crossed that Rubicon, and we've gone to the cloud. I want to get back to what Sandy came up with. It wasn't even on my list, but I want to talk about like the process of how you go to the cloud. And I think that we need to get back to the beginning of it. What applications should go and what's that process? And if we can get into a little bit of the details of it, of doing one of these, like we want to get inside the mind of the government, especially, but maybe we can talk to you, Tom, because you're heading these user groups. This is what you're talking about, the business decision to go to the cloud and what should I do first? Should I do Microsoft 365? What do you hear? What's the word on the street at the DCOI?
Well, it takes a full strategy, and it's not just cloud, it's a hybrid cloud. It's, what do you want to keep on-prem? What do you need to put in the data center colos, which is a half a step to the cloud? Yeah. And because of latency issues that you might want to keep, it really takes a holistic approach. And, I always quote Mike Cassidy, and, you really should spend 2 years before you move anything to the cloud and get a handle on your portfolio. And you might want to collapse some things into an agency-wide service. And you may have multiple redundant systems out there. You want to reduce your footprint. I mean, it's, I feel for, the small and micro agencies that are Swiss Army knives. They have to do everything. It's very difficult for them to be in the cloud because they just have limited labor force, and they can't necessarily afford the contractors to come in and take care of their situation. They could short term, but they need to hand that off back over to the government operations. So I would just, I'm waiting to hear what Sandy has to say on her approach on how she's tackling the application rationalization and the thresholds for what goes to the cloud.
So one little comment before we go to Sandy, Mike Cassidy, he's the first one to go to the cloud, right? And he's telling you to wait. So Mike's great. He's over at Department of Justice. I know you know him, Mike Hardy. He's over at U.S. Trustees. He's been a big advocate of the cloud, and he's just always on the kind of the bleeding edge of it. Sandy, you were talking a little bit about it, but I love to hear about that business decision, app rationalization. Am I going to go hybrid? Am I going to go to the data center? Am I going to go into cloud? How do you work through your portfolio and come up with a strategy?
Well, it's a collaborative effort. So I work over in policy and plans, but I work very closely with operations who actually manage the data center. And we have collaboratively worked together to develop a questionnaire. if you allow me to use that phrase. We have a questionnaire that is utilized to determine, is this something that needs to stay in a little small comm closet? Is it something that needs to go to our colo? Is it something that's going to go to Azure? And how we develop this is based off of our needs. We've come up with the criteria of, hey, certain things like security needs to stay on premise. So if it meets certain criteria, that stuff is going to stay on premise. If it's something that needs to be in close proximity, then it needs to go here. And then if it's something that is agency-wide that has like a database or other things that need to go with it, then maybe it makes sense to go to Azure. We also look at what is the actual business need, kind of what Tom was saying. There are duplications that just happens in every agency, especially when you have a headquarters and you have all these different regions. There is going to be duplication. So a lot of things that we look at when someone comes and says, okay, I want to go to the cloud, we look at what is your business case? What are you actually utilizing this tool for? And then we work with other entities within OCIO to see if there is something else that actually does that. And if so, let's all get together and make a determination if whatever your business need can be roped into this other business need, or does it actually need to remain separate? Once we've made those decisions, then we go into okay, what is your application, or what does it actually do? We ask a lot of different questions to get the developers really thinking about how they've done business in the past. Then we give them solutions. We say, okay, you've had it as a VM. I'm just making this up now. You had 5 VMs. We think that you can do this as an app service, or we can put you in this data warehouse, which will do exactly what you need it to do. And then we kind of walk them through why that's the best solution for them. Because let's be honest, when something's been done the same way for a very long time, people are hesitant to move to newer technology. You've been doing this for a long time. It's worked perfectly. Why rock the boat? Can we just do a lift and shift? But that's not always the best approach. So there's a lot of conversations, there's a lot of meetings, there's a lot of prep work that is done. And then there's a lot of guiding customers down the path that we need them to go down so that we have a future with whatever the technology stack is that we're utilizing.
Yeah, it's fantastic. How about what you're trying to do at the FDIC, Frankie?
Yeah, I think we use very similar approach. I think I'd like to say thank you, GSA, leading the effort about creating those cloud strategy. As a small agency, we really follow that kind of cloud first, evolve to the cloud smart strategy. And I think like I mentioned earlier, we actually evolve a little bit further about portfolio. We're actually on top of it. We call it ecosystem. A business function on top of the portfolio is because the business actually tell where's the data actually need to be integrated, and system follow that business information need for that purpose. In that, without knowing the business relationship among related business, sometimes very difficult to tell which system migrate to which cloud. Oftentimes, you have multiple clouds as a candidate. You could migrate to AWS or Azure or other cloud. But where is it to get the most value out of your data integrity? But reduce the risk about moving the data from one cloud to another cloud, but crossing the open internet from time to time. Those are the things we need to consider. On top of that thinking, we really put the value on the business architecture on top of the typical IT focused migration. In that, we believe we have the buy-in from the business manager. We engage business manager as such. They're realizing their information being maximize the value about what they want to do with a secure and the portability and reliability of the cloud. I think that everything Sandy and Tom said are very, very good, but we did extra point about on the top of that is a business ecosystem, the IT ecosystem that we kind of analyzing with.
Great. And I know, Julio, we were talking before about this data project where you're getting all these data feeds. Just tell me a little bit about what you have to work through on a big project like that. You're doing it, interfacing with lots of different data systems.
Yeah, it's, the biggest thing that we've been spending that's taken a lot of time, and we've been ready for months to go. It's just getting, you know, our management to understand that, like, hey, we need to do it, and that it's not as big as lift as they want, but it's really comes down to the training. So we have all the labels, we follow what NARA has laid out. For me, being a security guy, I was like, can't go with CUI, but let's go with something that we block. And then they have to purposely change the label to something, but we know that's not going to work. So that's been probably the biggest challenge, because the technology's there. We've been in 365 for probably 6 or 7 years. Again, one of the things that when we're talking about data, is we still have those traditional net apps where people are saving their data. People are using OneDrive, but we have a mixed batch. We recently did a survey in the community, and it was, I was surprised to know, like, a lot of people didn't know really how to use OneDrive and SharePoint. So that's something that the CIO's office at MCC is starting to ramp up on some training. When I first started at MCC during my first, go around in 2013, we had SharePoint online folks. We had people that were teaching people how to use SharePoint and how to use the technology. And again, being a small agency, you have to equip the end user. You need to show them, and again, from our security standpoint, it's like, how do we know the data's, we're concerned about exfiltration. We're concerned about, because we have people all over the world. Tom, a little bit about our agencies. We're probably in about 15 countries around the world. We got all these partners. We're sharing data with SharePoint externally, with Box. So the SOC guys are staying busy, but there's only 2 of them. They're the ones that are depending on the alerts. So again, we're pushing a lot of training, right? So we have the technology to look at. 365 has some nice stuff integrated where we can take some action. But again, with having limited resources, those are one of the constraints. The assistant and I go back and forth. I would love to have some technology that's outside of the 365 ecosystem, just from all your eggs in one basket. Is what else are we using to look at the data? So that's kind of how we're moving right now.
It's fantastic. A lot of agencies don't take advantage of training. Some of it comes in with your contract. There's some really good vendor training out there. Then, join an ATARC event. So everybody here, you're doing the right thing. You're educating yourself with ATARC, and you will get your CP credits. Mike, I just think of, these agencies is very complicated. They're in various stages of modernizing different things. And I know you work across all the platforms, all the clouds and in the data center. What advice could you give on what you've seen on some of these implementations?
Yeah, and again, it goes back to I want to echo kind of what everyone's saying here, because I feel like we're trending in that direction, right? Is understand the why. Right, we understand that there's a mandate to go to the cloud. Why are we adopting this technology? What does my application need to do? How does this serve the mission? Yeah. Whether it's Kubernetes, automation, your cloud platform, I want to be multi-cloud, I want to be hybrid. What matters to my enterprise? Be selfish in your thinking as you're planning your architecture. Build your software solutions as a team, meaning I want my softwares to work together. I don't want my software to operate in a silo, right? I want solutions that work together, not work against each other. And that's really the best advice I can give here is everyone is being more deliberate. Be deliberate in your planning, be selfish in your thinking, and don't just do things to do them. We want to have a plan and be deliberate in our motion.
Yep. I was talking to Shane Barney. Many of you know him. He's a CISO at USCIS. They're going to be 100% in the cloud, and it took them about 10 years. It was a journey of working hard every day, and they're in the cloud just because of the flexibility. I don't think it's about saving money, like pure play. It's about the flexibility and being able to onboard new applications and that. So it takes a while, even if you're like dedicated to doing it. And I think that's okay. As much as I run the Advanced Technology Academic Research Center, it just takes a while to do this sometimes. It just takes a little bit of time. Good stuff. Let's get the last poll question out of the way. And this is why we're doing it, I think would probably describe it. What areas of the federal government modernization you believe the community software can have the most significant aspect? guess it's probably your perspective. I'm kind of interested to see what happens out of this. What results are we going to get? Okay. Pretty interesting. Oh, so you could click more than one. I didn't quite catch that. So I was like wondering, my math, I'm not the greatest at it, but yeah, that's adding up to more than 100%. I think those are all good answers. There was a question earlier, and and I think each of you touched on a little bit. How do I bring the workforce with me? And I just remember a conversation back with the FCC when David Braid, he did a lift and shift. It was very early. They were in the FCC data center, and it was not very good, and they had power issues. And he did a lift and shift, and he was really excited about it. And he asked the team what they thought of it, and the first person said, "Well, what happens to my job?" So how about the culture for doing this kind of change? And maybe we'll start off with you, Sandy. How do you get everybody on board with this when you're making all these changes?
The approach that we used was it's more of a top down. So the strategy was developed. It was a collaborative effort, but we ensured that the strategy was signed by the CIO. And in the strategy, we have in there that one of the things that we are dedicated to doing is the necessary training, so that the individuals within the workforce who may be more of a bare metal skill set, they know that we're committed to getting you the necessary training so that you can transition with us to things in the cloud. I think that has really helped. We've got the executive leadership team and the leadership team of the directors. They were all on board, and they have been reassuring the workforce that there shouldn't be a concern. There is still work to be done, regardless if you can walk into a data center and see blinking lights. There is still value in you as an employee, and we will ensure that you can transition and be just as happy in your job with your stuff sitting in the cloud as you are with it remaining in the data center.
Yeah. And how about the training aspect of getting them up to speed on these new skills? Do you have a program for that? How do you deal with all that?
So the program is being developed. So as the cloud architect, it's one of my duties to figure out where do we have those gaps and find the necessary trainings or make suggestions of the various trainings that need to happen. So it's on my plate, but I also work very closely with operations in the data center team to understand what their staff does and then find the necessary trainings that can easily map over. Obviously, we have contractor staff, and when it's next year, I believe we'll be going into a recompete. We'll also have things in the contract that's going to lay out the skills that are also necessary for the contractor staff to be able to continue to work with us.
I think that's an important point. If the contractors are there and they're not getting, they could be threatened. If they don't get themselves reskilled, they're going to be resistant to doing some new things. So very important. Julio.
Hey, I just wanted to piggyback off Sandy, as you heard me mention a couple times with training. So one of the things that we've done is, I believe in FISMA, there's some questions around like how you training the workforce. And so we have a couple dashboards in Power BI that when people sign up for training, it shows up there. It's also for CPE management, so we make sure. And so we've been really pushing, because again, we're big in AWS. And so as we are integrated with state, we have all this ESI training available to us. So we meet probably once a month, and you can see who's taking what training. Again, I've taken a couple Power BI training, but we've kind of integrated that as part of kind of a monthly discussion. Windows 11 is one, right? I'm starting to get my folks, hey, are you up to speed on what's new in the new platform? And so again, it's something that we do once a month, because again, I need the visual to see kind of where we're at. And it's been helpful to make sure that people are up to speed with the technology and that they're moving forward, because I've noticed that in smaller agencies is that certifications, yes, they're great. but are people being trained, and are they ready for the next round of new software? So just wanted to add that too.
Yeah, fantastic, great. Frankie?
Yeah, I'd like to share any additional training about adoption. It's about culture. It's about internal communication. People treat that training as a check mark, but when you have a community of practice, routine holding monthly or quarterly conversation with a key stakeholder about this is why we do cloud migration. This is how we do cloud migration. This is the success use cases on this division, on that program, who actually successfully deploy solution to the cloud. So that will actually becoming accelerated in additional training at the individual level. That's organization level, communication, and cultural reference. Thank you.
Great, great. Mike?
Yeah, so I actually wanted to key off of what Frankie said there in regards to adoption. One of the things that we're doing at Red Hat is we're investing in our customers adopting our platforms. We're not just doing a sales motion, right? We are doing tons of post-sales support to make sure that we're helping moving the football, right? Because we have a responsibility to our clients. You're investing in us, we need to invest in you. And this doesn't mean, I don't mean to come off salesy, but it's something that, and not to reuse deliberate too much, but we're being very deliberate in that motion to where whether it's OpenShift, whether it's RHEL, whether it's Ansible, we need to help our clients modernize and adopt these new technologies. And every software vendor, I think, has that responsibility back to their customers.
Yeah, it's not great if you sell some software licenses and it sits on the shelf and nobody knows how to use it or maximize it. No matter what the software is, you want to take advantage of the stuff that's baked into it that you're already paying for anyway, right? So that's a great point, Mike. And Tom, I'm back to you. Like, what do you see across the community?
Yeah, Frankie mentioned something that he's both in AWS and Azure, which is unique because a lot of agencies, at least at the application level, are just picking one vendor because of their lack of limited resources. Misconfiguration is probably the biggest security vulnerability when it comes to cloud. And so you really need to be aware of one platform and be concentrated on that, particularly with the tools available. But larger agencies can have the flexibility of having multiple, but they're probably isolated teams working on each cloud. And some of the biggest benefits of the large agencies I've seen is central function within cloud management. So it goes under their cloud umbrella, and that only includes the procurement of it, but the management and monitoring of that application. So you've offloaded it to another internal department within the agency to take over that function for the business, and they can really keep track of your cost on a month-to-month basis, which is probably the most critical thing, or you'll go broke if you don't track what your spend is in the cloud.
Great. Go ahead, Julio.
No, Tom, you just said something that triggered like the misconfiguration. So definitely a concern. Spent the last 4 years in audit and when got into meetings about understanding FedRAMP and the customer responsibility matrix, I think there's a lot of people who still don't know what they're responsible for. I think it's laid out pretty well. And one of the things that we're undertaking is making sure that all of those controls are like, we're going through each one, because that's a concern of ours as well, is the more systems you have is in this configuration with the smaller group. But I just wanted to say that was a great flag.
Great. We've got a question. What do the panelists think about the future of facilitating broader government knowledge sharing given advances like generative AI? I will say the DoD on generative AI just had Task Force Lima. It's just been in the press. They had their first meeting yesterday. I think we're learning to share better. The government's got to organize really quickly. I know we have the DCOI. There's some other platforms. Of course, we have some ATARC working groups too. and we're coming out with the generative AI ones, completely self-promoting. How about this? How about inside your own agency? How are agencies organizing to take on these newer challenges that pop up? Or in Sandy, I think you mentioned it, like these groups inside of your agency, these, brown baggers and things like that. Is that you think part of the answer?
So here at NRC, we have a bunch of nuclear scientists. So we have people who are really smart and they want to learn new things. So when new technology comes out, we do have a subset of people who want to collaborate and want to understand. We also have the subset of people who it's not broken, so why try to fix it? I think within our agency, specifically for AI, there are a couple of different working groups to really try to figure out how does that really play a role in the nuclear field and what should we be planning for. So I think we've got a couple of policies that are out currently for review of how we're going to view AI, how it can be used. And I've only been with the agency for 2 years, so I can't speak long-term on how the agency has done things in the past, but it does appear that they, when things come out, there are a lot of conversation and there's a lot of collaboration when it comes down to certain entities within the agency. But as a government-wide, I think that we could do a bit of a better job collaborating. It would be nice if, like when Office 365, there was more federated agencies so that there could be additional collaboration going on instead of us having to send emails to Tom, asking Tom to ask the rest of the DCOI community a question on our behalf.
Yeah. I think GSA's got an event coming up around AI coming up that we're helping them on too. Rumor has it. And let's just not even restrict it to AI. How do internal working groups, if any of you seen any success on that? Even Mike, if you've seen it, like I know Justice has some internal groups on different things. Anything else? Any other lessons there that we can take?
Yeah, so I actually think there is a conversation taking place, right? And as we come out of the data centers and everyone's moving to similar platforms, similar services, similar managed services, there is a conversation taking place across leadership to where you're starting to see more best practices in place. We're starting to see people do things the same way and adopt technology in a standard fashion. And a lot of that is being driven by the automation that's taking place across government. So I think as we modernize and move to the cloud and move to a similar standardized platforms, that we're going to see that take hold across the space.
Yep. I have a question. Tom kind of opened up the door on this one, but as cloud adoption accelerates, what potential risks do you foresee in terms of exclusive reliance on cloud service providers? How can these risks be mitigated while still benefiting from the convenience of the CSPs? So, Tom, I'll let you kind of pull that back because you kind of started it really. I want to rationalize all the people that I'm working with so I don't have so many, but then how can I avoid complete reliance on somebody and I can't even get out of the contract? It's, what's the right balance there?
It's not just the CSPs, but it's the SaaS providers and the low code and no code that you've just developed all your business processes around the software. And you wonder if you could even translate it. They don't make a market to translate it from one vendor to another. So it's going to be difficult on renewal. You are left with nothing but a JFOC after that, which is a justification for other than open source. And it's an issue we need to address. I don't know exactly what I think we're just working ourselves into a pigeonhole, and I don't know how we get out of it easily. It's a challenge. So you really have to make these strategic decisions up front based on your business requirements, not write your statement of work based on some functionality or PowerPoint the vendors have to share with you. Because you may be living with the software for a while.
Yep. Mike, you want to add anything since you are one of the vendors?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, the concern is valid, right? And this goes back to my previous comment of build your solutions as a software team, right? Diversify where you can, and build your solutions in a way that you're not over reliant. Now understand that we're going to the cloud. So what do we want to leverage the cloud for, right? Is it managed services? Yes, right? Because we want to offload our workforce capability there as much as we can to free up support resources. But we want to make sure that, and the phrase we run into is vendor lock-in, and, going to the cloud is a, it's a step towards that, right? Because going in and then coming out, that's a challenge. So it's just, when we're building our applications, when we're building our solutions, we want to work with software solutions that are extensible, right? We want things that integrate. For instance, Ansible automation platform has been widely adopted by our vendor ecosystem to where now it's not only supported by Red Hat, but we have certified content collections that are then supported by the vendor community. So that's one way to diversify your portfolio in a way that your support is expanded outside of the cloud provider.
Yep. Frankie?
Yeah, I'd like to put on top of what Mike and Tom just mentioned. I think the risk to me actually got three fronts. First front is about cloud lock-in, but cloud lock-in start with the corporate mission. What kind of mission function or mission support function you want to be put in the cloud? What if that cloud has a challenge? How quickly you can move away from that cloud? That becoming very strategic call. Every agency will come and need to make. Do you really want your missions or corporate survival function in particular location? And you cannot walk away in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years. That's a very top level discussion you need to have before you say, actually, I got some lower level issue like the cloud lock-in. Lock-in it's just a symptom to bigger problem we have to answer first. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Great comments. Tom?
Yeah, I just want to build on what Mike said, and he said it twice, and it's really it's worth mentioning again. Really understand why you're moving to the cloud. Just don't move for the cloud for the sake of moving to the cloud. You have to have a reason. And like Sandy said, you're not going to save money likely, but there might be some cost savings. If you have an application that has a lot of reserved instances, or you need a whole bunch of servers that are going unused for the life of those services, you might save money using reserved instances in the cloud that way. Business resiliency, having easily redundant systems within the cloud is another way of doing that. Or service delivery. You just want, because of COVID, everyone's working at home. It was easier to get to the cloud through your local cable provider than you were trying to get back to your building in DC. Those are valid reasons, but chances are you're going to probably spend more money, but there's valid reasons for moving to the cloud. And for those that aren't valid, move them to a colo or move them internally to an enterprise data center that's actually being run like a data center. That's it.
Talking business. I love it. The government people talking business. It's very exciting. Sandy.
I just want to piggyback off of what everyone said. One of the strategies that we're utilizing is mission critical systems. Those aren't being moved to the cloud. They're either going to go to the colo or they're going to go into the comm closet, depending on what the function is. And I would highly recommend that if you have mission critical things, that if, let's say, at some point Azure becomes way too expensive and you can't afford to continue to operate there, the things that make the mission happen aren't tied to a vendor. They're not tied to a cloud provider. They're still within your control, either at a colo or in your comm closet.
Yeah. Fantastic. Keep the questions coming from the audience. We're getting closer to the end and the beginning. Can you elaborate? The next question I have is, could you elaborate on the strategies mentioned to maintain solution diversity in your government cloud services? How can agencies balance the need for diversity with the desire for standardized systems? Maybe Mike Hardy, I'll give you a shot at that, because you see what these agencies have to go through.
Yeah, so it's, again, planning, and a big part of this is wanting solutions that, again, so when you're interfacing with any vendor, right, is to understand how does your solution work with other solutions, right? Before I procure anything, I want to come to the table with the knowledge of my enterprise and what I'm trying to accomplish, and make sure that what I'm going to procure is adding value to my enterprise and isn't going to lock me in, and is going to serve the mission. That's really what we're looking for, right? Is we want solutions that work together, not against each other, right? And we don't put our eggs all in one basket either, right? But also we don't want to pigeonhole ourselves to a point to where, you know, I'm giving up functionality for being scared of lock-in, right? So there's, you know, one of the hardest things in life to accomplish is balance. And it is that there is that balancing act to where I don't want to put too much in with AWS. I don't want to put too much in with Azure or Red Hat. It's a balancing game that basically we need to understand the inventory of our enterprise and what that looks like.
Yeah. So you don't want too much, you don't want too little. It's anybody else want to continue? It seems like we're pulling that thread pretty hard today. It seems like that keeps coming up. Tom, you want to add anything else on that?
Yeah, I don't have anything.
Okay. Okay, great.
Hey, Tom,
yes.
if I may, yeah, so, you know, we're in that, again, not trying to have all our eggs in one basket, but being a small agency, CIOs mostly made of contractors, there is some benefit of us kind of having this stuff in the cloud quicker, right? Because again, we're dependent on contractors to do the work. You know, we've looked at some other services that like DOJ provides. So, you know, I see it both ways. It's just, again, there's only a handful of players that when we talk about infrastructure as a service, you're going to, right? So we started off with AWS, you know, Azure is being looked into now. That may not be too hard to do, but I don't know, like Tom mentioned, I don't know what the solution is once you're locked in.
Yeah. You got to be really strong on those contracts, I think, but yes, so you don't get
maybe I can share one more thought.
Yeah.
We don't treat one company as one strategy. We actually treat a related business as a community. For the best of the interest, business agility, a smaller community can actually make quicker decisions, maybe serve the biggest value to the business for the cloud migration point of view. Narrow down the related function into smaller ecosystem or sub-ecosystem. Again, ecosystem and portfolio had that commonality identified, it commonality created common function, common concern. With that kind of approach, you may tell if this particular technology becoming a sub-ecosystem standardized in this smaller community, a company could have 3 to 4 smaller community, for example. Not necessarily one company has only one ecosystem. That's very standardized by create structure, but also create bureaucracy. The people want to be agile, get only one thing. That's not the flexibility people could have the best. Thank you.
Yep. Mike?
Yeah, just one additional thing on here, and I think what we're getting to is portability. We need our workloads to be portable across cloud deployments, across data center deployments, right? That's how we avoid the lock-in, is to make sure that we're building things in a fashion where they can move around. And that's one of the things that containers has really helped us do, is to build workloads that can be standardized and run anywhere.
I think that's a great point. So at least you have some leverage. You know, at least you have some leverage. Do you want to move from a cloud CSP? Not really, but you at least have leverage to do that. That's great. We're getting closer to the end of the beginning here. And if I was doing a virtual roundtable, which some of you have done, it's like, how do we build the white paper? What points do we need to get in there that we haven't gotten out so far? So maybe we'll just do a round robin. I'll start off with you, Tom, no pressure or anything, but just some of the things that you've seen that will help, you know, us migrate faster and better, I guess.
Well, one thing I wanted to mention was our cloud operations best practices guide that we just developed. It's going to be posted on CIO.gov here soon. And I'd love to get with you, Tom, and on another seminar to talk about it. It actually came from a survey from our community of practice, and the biggest concern they had in our survey was still cloud operations. They still wanted more education, more documents, guidance documents on this. And it was really interesting because we've done 10 years of cloud migrations and they still want operations experience because to Julio's point, not everyone knows what they're doing. And if nobody's in charge, or if everyone's in charge, nobody's in charge of certain aspects of cloud. So I'm happy that we've worked hard with multiple agencies on developing that, and CISA was a part of that, FedRAMP, and many other agencies and participants. And we're happy to share that with you at the appropriate time.
And we mentioned this off camera, but we'd be happy to distribute it, maybe do an event around it. That'd be fantastic. Sandy.
I think what we've learned here at NRC is it kind of expanding on what Mike has been saying. You have to know your business. You have to really know what is the business, what are we trying to accomplish, and then it has to be a collaborative effort. You have to work with the engineers. You have to work with the developers. That's the only way that you're actually going to be successful.
No, I agree. Frankie.
Yeah, I think similar idea. After 10 years of the cloud strategy from the cloud first to cloud smart, we kind of rip the low-hanging fruits, like the email, like the Office 365, and a few other things. IT know this pretty good, but once we move beyond this IT major area becoming business mission, that's where we don't know the business. So we really want to learn deeper about business function, about this ecosystem, IT ecosystem. From there, we divide it into a smaller sub-ecosystem. From there, we create commonality, we create portability, we create integration from there. Hopefully that could divide and conquer, make that thing easier to happen.
Great. Julio?
I got two quick things. I think all the panelists said it is really knowing your risk, and it's just not security risks, right? It's what's your risk going into the cloud. And so I think that was really, Wayne, and so that's what I would say. And the other thing is know what you're responsible for. Again, going into a FedRAMP, just because it's FedRAMP, you have a specific amount, you have controls you're responsible for, but do you actually know what they're doing, right? I think a lot of people are just saying, hey, they're FedRAMP, and they're going. We've recently just dealt with that on restoration. What's Microsoft's restoration? People had to look it up. And so I think those are things that people need to be aware of. So, do your homework, know what you're responsible for, and know what they're responsible for.
Great. Mike, thank you for doing this. Can you round out this conversation, and then we'll get this, put a bow tie on this?
Yeah, certainly. So, we've talked to the point of planning and investing and understanding our business. And as our enterprises expand out of the data center into a single cloud or multiple clouds, I think one thing that we didn't touch on enough today is embracing automation, embracing repeatable processes, right? Our workforces are ephemeral. Somebody here said today that, yeah, we're relying on contractors. Contractors come and go. The job market, there's a lot of movement. Repeatable processes that can be automated first should be, because that's going to help you create an enterprise that's supportable and not so much dependent on Ed being here to support my enterprise going forward. I want something that I can reuse for the eternity that my enterprise is going to be running.
That's a great way to end the conversation. I'd like to thank everybody doing this. We do have one more poll question. Hang on. I still don't want to get in trouble. This is an easy one. We actually make this automated. See, we had this automation thing you're talking about in process. We can get this to you automatically just by you answering that. And our next event is, we have a Zero Trust Phase 2 demonstration, which is going fantastic. We are basically, the phase 1, we had individual companies working this. We realized that a lot of things, and we talked about it today, it's an integration of lots of different capabilities. And in this company, Blackwood, they've got, wow, like 9 people in addition to them on their team. a whole zero trust solution. Should be fantastic. It's government only, so you have to be in government to do that. But once again, thank you to our partners at Red Hat, amazing panelists, Frankie, Mike, Julio, Sandy, Tom, thank you so much. And thank you all for spending your afternoon with us. And we have a great rest of the day.
Thank you.